بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Good evening everyone. It's an honor for me to be here presenting about ovarian cancer between this group of experts in ovarian cancers and gynecological cancers, including gynecologists, medical oncologists, and also in the presence of Professor Hussein Basalama, who is the father of the medical school, and it's a real honor, and I'd like to thank Prof. Khalid Said and Dr. Nasreen for the invitation. My talk will be about the second-line chemotherapy for ovarian cancer, and during this talk I will be giving some statistics defining what we mean by recurrence or relapse. My discussion actually will focus, for sake of time, about the epithelial ovarian cancer, and then we'll have some discussion which pathway will be for platinum sensitive or platinum resistant ovarian cancer. It's an international data showing that the ovarian cancer comes almost to be the 7th most common cancer in the female. So as a gynecological cancer, you're trying cancer to be the first most common gynecological cancer. The ovarian cancer will be the second common cancer. And the death, if looking to the estimated death, ovarian cancer will be causing more death than uterine cancer. So from population as an incidence, we'll see uterine cancer a little bit more. However, as a mortality, ovarian cancer comes to be more of a challenge, where because patients get diagnosed in more later stage and the higher risk of relapse. That's why it's getting more interest and more clinical trials is getting developed around ovarian cancer. So this is a Saudi data. It's from the Saudi Cancer Registry in 2010. We see here slightly a little bit it's getting more common. However, still uterine cancer is more common than ovarian cancer, which is consistent with the data that we have internationally. The age of diagnosis is slightly different because we have the ovarian cancer here around 50 to 60 median age, which is slightly younger than the age of diagnosis at the international. So just to cut after the first line treatment. So usually carboplatin paclitaxel is a standard first line treatment for advanced ovarian cancer. Usually we follow patients on a 3-monthly review for the first 2 years, 6-monthly review. This is the majority of the doctors, despite no clear guidelines on that. However, this is what we have been doing in our center, and it's fitting to the limits that they put for NCC guidelines for follow-up of cancer patient. And each visit we do a clinical assessment, and then this plus or minus the CA-125, and at the end I'm going to talk why some people they stop doing the CA-125. There is no clear evidence for routine CT radiological assessment, and as the general guidelines, we don't do the radiological assessment unless there is an indication from symptom-wise or from earlier finding that we need to follow up radiologically by CT, or in some cases we do a ultrasound. So relapse is a real common in ovarian cancer, and this is something we face. Talking about relapse, if we take the all ovarian cancer stage from 1 to 4, up to 60% they will develop a relapse. If we talk about more advanced cases stage 3 and 4, the risk of relapse goes up to 80%, which is higher. The platinum-free interval, which is a major determinant for disease and plan of management in those patients. So that's why majority of the studies calculated the platinum-free interval, and it has been shown by evidence that it's a predictor for response to chemotherapy in second line. Also, it has a prognostic factors for progression-free survival and overall survival. More recent data is showing the patient who had a late response, they might benefit from secondary site reduction more than people who had just a short a short interval. So relapse or recurrence, if we use the word changing, the CA-125 has been used previously in the past as a monitoring for patients with the ovarian cancer during the follow-up. We knew that people who are relapsing, their CA-125 will start to rise before we see clinical evidence on a CT scan or before the patient develops symptoms. So the it was a very interesting data. Can we base our treatment based on a CA-125, or we need just to see an evidence? And until the kind of like, the randomized control trial showed the benefits. There was nobody was kind of like, knowing really what to do. That's why, like, we came to the evidence of, like, we call it serological kind of like, relapse. This is like, the biggest data, like, where we have about whether if the patient had a CA-125 elevation only without symptoms, what to do for them. And the change happened in this CA-125 follow-up later on, where some doctors, like, start to adopt this guideline, this data, and say, like, no more for, like, doing the CA-125. However, the NCC guidelines and the majority of the guidelines for ovarian cancer, they would still suggest a discussion between the physician and the patient about the benefit and the downside of repeating a CA-125. So in this trial, they randomized like no more than 1,000 patients, and they was randomized to early versus a delayed treatment. So those patients, like, who finished the first treatment, they had a follow-up with the CA-125, and then they get randomized if they have no symptoms, either to when it gets rise or double. Sorry, when it gets double more than the upper normal of limit, they get randomized to early treatment versus waiting until symptoms or radiological manifestation to appear. So clearly, like, the overall survival did not show any difference in those patients. And based on the kind of like, the good number of this of patients in this trial, like, this is start, like, to change guidelines in some of the centers where the doctors try to adopt the kind of the plan of the delayed treatments. So the conclusion of this trial showed, like, early chemotherapy did not improve overall survival, and it was treated with some worsening quality of life. So it's one of kind of like, the classical trial where quality of life was included, and that was the evidence where doctors start to stop doing the CA-125 in some centers. So the platinum-free interval has divided the patient who had the relapse either to be the platinum-sensitive disease or platinum-resistant disease. By definition, this is when the interval is more than 6 months, and if it's resistant, it's less than 6 months. If patient develop disease while they're in treatment, this is like, we have a refractory disease, which is unfortunately it has a worse prognosis than all the other kind of like, categories of the disease. So in the sensitive group, okay, retreatment has, so it's kind of like, general rules, what to do about them. So retreatment has been, with the same protocol, might be an option. Okay, combination has been shown to be superior to single agent, and that's majority of the kind of like guidelines support combination if the patient tolerate. Secondary cytoreduction, which has like very interesting data. There's some improvement in the disease-free survival. However, there's some questioning about the overall survival. However, if the interval is getting like longer and longer, those patients will start to benefit more of cytoreduction. So in highly specialized centers, cytoreduction is considered like to be decided before the option of chemotherapy starting as a second line. The combination, there's multiple combination by evidence of the clinical trial. The carbopaclitaxel, carbo-pegylated liposomal doxorubicin, or carboplatin gemcitabine. So this is one of the kind of like the major studies that showed like single agent carboplatin compared to a combination of carboplatin gemcitabine, where there was an improvement in the overall survival, in the progression-free survival, and there was a major trend improvement in overall survival. And this is kind of like where the adoption of the combination chemotherapy in the second line of sensitive disease. This is another trial where like the paclitaxel. So paclitaxel. This is the survival curve, like with showing the progression-free survival, which was the primary endpoint of this trial. This is another trial where like paclitaxel has been like incorporated and compared to other combination of platinum, and it showed like that paclitaxel has slightly improved the progression-free survival, despite that it was small. However, it was statistically significant. And in patients who did not receive paclitaxel carboplatin become the best kind of like choice for second-line treatment in this kind of patients. The other trial that kind of like compared the evidence of the pegylated liposomal doxorubicin, where it compared to paclitaxel. The experimental arm was carboplatin and the paclitaxel, and the investigational arm was with the use of the carboplatin and the doxorubicin. and it showed like, they have an equal data, where the progression-free survival was not, it was a non-inferior study, so it was not inferior to the control arm, and that's kind of like, put the carboplatin plus the liposomal doxorubicin to be kind of like, an interesting combination to be used. The idea of using which combination will be depending on the patient's symptoms and what is the first line that they receive. So it's good that we have 3 combinations that showed a very good results, that they're comparable, and depending on the patient's symptom and side effect profile, we can choose the second line treatment. This is the Kaplan-Meier curve, which showing kind of like, almost there's no separation in this group, and the patient was kind of like, having no different statistical significance in the progression-free survival. In some patients where carboplatin cannot be used and paclitaxel has been used in the first line, trabectedin, which is an interesting marine antineoplastic agent, has been combined with the liposomal doxorubicin. It showed like, very good tolerability of the patients, and it showed like, a good overall response. So in some cases where we consider a combination but the patient cannot receive carboplatin and paclitaxel, this might be an interesting combination to be used. We know that trabectedin I think it's not approved in the state, but in the European countries it has been approved and has been utilized there. So patients who are not a candidate of combination chemotherapy because of the performance status or because the patient does not tolerate the chemo, so a single agent has shown also to be better than supportive care, and multiple agent has been used. So topotecan, gemcitabine, liposomal doxorubicin, trabectedin, paclitaxel has been used as a single agent in sensitive disease too. The role of bevacizumab in patients with the sensitive disease has not been that well studied. The bevacizumab in combination with the combination was not well. It was studied in patients with the sensitive disease in the OCEAN trial, where they put the patients with the carbo gemcitabine. They added the bevacizumab for them, and they found that there's an improvement in the progression-free survival. However, there was some criticism about this trial where because of the number of the patients and the statistical analysis, so it was not adopted by everyone to be used in sensitive disease. However, the number of patients was not duplicated in another trial too. So that's why there was some criticism about the OCEAN trial. In the resistant disease, so single agent has been more preferable as a kind of strategy for treating those patients. Bevacizumab has a better role, when it's combined with a single agent in those patients that has better evidence. In Cochrane view, paclitaxel, the liposomal doxorubicin or topotecan has been shown to be an equal, and they have a good overall response rate and comparable. So depending on the initial therapy and the side effect that has been tried to be choose one of them. Other also agents has been utilized as the gemcitabine, etoposide, docetaxel, pemetrexed. The role of bevacizumab has been shown to have better overall response rate when it was added. A major trial in 2012 which kind of changed the guideline in this type of patients. So the earlier trial has kind of had the chemotherapy preference of the patient, of the treating physician, and then they added the bevacizumab to be every 3 weekly. The result kind of was consistent, but the response rate has been measured and also the CA125 it was consistent between the 3 types of objective assessment. The overall survival also and the progression-free survival kind of has been improved. It was consistent between the 3 agents, which kind of support the use of bevacizumab with the single agent in resistant disease, and started to change the guideline and come to the NCCN protocol. In this small trial, they compared the combination versus the single agent, and there was an overall response rate was the same. Progression-free survival was not different. There was increasing toxicity. So as a general rule, in majority of patients, we consider single agent and possibly bevacizumab to be added in selected patients. This is as an interesting how long we continue to treat, because we know that sometimes we get those young patients and they tolerate the first line, they get progression after that, so we proceed to second line, third line, And data like this is kind of like, you know, a literature review that has been done where, like, you know, they have more than 14,000 patients. And they found, like, you know, patient will derive benefit from second line, third line, and fourth line. So it is, and it's a good to continue treatment provided that the patients, they have a very good performance status and they're tolerating the chemotherapy well. And we still see, like, you know, in majority of, in our center when we see patients, they usually kind of like, you know, they get sick by the time we reach the second line. But, like, you know, in centers where we have younger patients and better supportive system, they can continue to go to third line or fourth line. There's some idea about, like, you know, using hormonal therapy, despite it was discouraged because of some side effects and a very poor response rate. Targeted therapy has been used as second line, just not to interfere because we have a lecture about the targeted therapy, so I'm not going to be putting more information here. So in summary, relapse is common in ovarian cancer. Platinum-free interval is an important predictor and, like, you know, prognostic factor. Cytoreduction need to be considered in all patients. In sensitive disease, combination is superior to single agent. A retreatment usually is successful in those patients. In platinum-resistant disease, single agent, depending on the initial treatment, adding bevacizumab to a single agent improves survival and has, like, you know, a better reproducibility from data. Further lines of treatment all the time, like, now, has been shown to improve survival. Performance status, like, you know, of the patient need to be considered because some patients, they are really healthy and they can tolerate, while other patients, they cannot, like, you know, tolerate. So a decision between the patient and physician has really need to be shared in those patients. And all the time, like, you know, clinical trials is the best option. However, if in the absence of no clinical trial, we can just, like, you know, see, depending on the patient performance status, which way to go. So with this, I think this is my last slide.